small crimes, such as petty larceny, fighting, and assault, escaped with impunity. Only treason and murder were taken account of, and the malefactors detained till the Great Seal should come into operation again. At the close of the Saturnalia, the wicked spirits were driven away. Great masses of troops and artillery having been drawn up with flying colours and all the pomp of war, the general beginneth then to offer meat offerings to the criminal devils and malevolent spirits, for it is usual and customary likewise amongst them to feast the condemned before their execution, inviting them to eat and drink, when presently he accuses them, in a strange language, by characters and figures, etc., of many offences and crimes committed by them, as to their having disquieted the land, killed his elephants and horses, etc., for all which they justly deserve to be chastised and banished from the country. Whereupon 3 great guns are fired as the last signal, upon which all the artillery and muskets are discharged, that, by their most terrible noise, the devils may be driven away, and they are so blind as to believe for certain that they really and effectually put them to flight. In Cambodia, the expulsion of evil spirits took place in March. Bits of broken statues and stones, considered as the abode of the demons, were collected and brought to the capital. Here as many elephants were collected as could be got together. On the evening of the full moon volleys of musketry were fired, and the elephants charged furiously to put the devils to flight. The ceremony was performed in 3 successive days. In Siam, the banishment of demons is annually carried into effect on the last day of the old year. A signal gun is fired from the palace, it is answered from the next station, and so from station to station, till the firing has reached the outer gate of the city. Thus the demons are driven out step by step. As soon as this is done, a consecrated rope is fastened round the circuit of the city walls, to prevent the banished demons from returning. The rope is made of tough couch grass, and is painted in alternate stripes of red, yellow, and blue. Annual expulsions of demons, witches, or evil influences appear to have been common among the heathen of Europe, if we may judge from the relics of such customs among their descendants at the present day. Thus among the heathen Wotyaks, a Finnish people of eastern Russia, all the young girls of the village assemble on the last day of the year or on New Year's Day, armed with sticks, the ends of which are split in 9 places. With these they beat every corner of the house and yard, saying, "We're driving Satan out of the village." Afterwards the sticks are thrown into the river below the village, and as they float downstream, Satan goes with them to the next village, from which he must be driven out in turn. In some villages the expulsion is managed otherwise. The unmarried men receive from every house in the village groats, flesh, and brandy. This they take to the fields, light a fire under a fir tree, boil the groats, and eat of the food they have brought with them, after pronouncing the words, "Go away into the wilderness, come not into the house." Then they return to the village, and enter every house where there are young women. They take hold of the young women, and throw them into the snow, saying, "May the spirits of disease leave you." The remains of the groats and other food are then distributed among all the houses in proportion to the amount that each contributed, and each family consumes its share. According to the Wotyak of the Malmy's district, the young women throw into the snow whomever they found in the houses, and this is called driving out Satan. Moreover, some of the boiled groats are cast into the fire with the words, "O God, afflict us not with sickness and pestilence. Give us not up as a prey to the spirits of the wood." But the most antique form of the ceremony is that observed by the Wotyaks of the Kazan government. First of all a sacrifice is offered to the devil at noon. Then all the men assemble on horseback in the centre of the village, and decide with which house they shall begin. When this question, which often gives rise to hot disputes, is settled, they tether their horses to the paling, and arm themselves with whips, clubs of lime wood, and bundles of lighted twigs. The lighted twigs are believed to have the greatest terrors for Satan. Thus armed, they proceed with frightful cries to beat every corner of the house and yard, then shut the door and spit at the ejected fiend. So they go from house to house, till the devil has been driven from every one. Then they mount their horses and ride out of the village, yelling wildly and brandishing their clubs in every direction. Outside of the village, they fling away the clubs and spit once more at the devil. The Cheremis, another Finnish people of eastern Russia, chase Satan from their dwellings by beating the walls with cudgels of lime wood. For the same purpose they fire guns, stab the ground with knives, and insert burning chips of wood in the crevices. Also they leap over bonfires, shaking out their garments as they do so, and in some districts they blow on long trumpets of lime tree bark to frighten them away. When he has fled to the wood, they pelt the trees with some of the cheesecakes and eggs which furnished the feast. In Christian Europe, the old heathen custom of expelling the powers of evil at certain times of the year has survived to modern times. Thus, in some villages of Calabria, the month of March is inaugurated with the expulsion of witches. It takes place at night to the sound of the church bells, and people running about the streets and crying, "March is come!" They say that the witches roam about in March, and the ceremony is repeated every Friday evening during the month. Often, as might have been anticipated, the ancient pagan rite has attached itself to church festivals. In Albania on Easter Eve, the young people light torches of resinous wood and march in procession, swinging them through the village. At last they throw the torches into the river, crying, "Ha, Kore! We throw you into the river, like these torches, that you may never return." Silesian peasants believe that on Good Friday the witches go their rounds and have great power for mischief. Hence about Oels, near Strehlitz, the people on that day arm themselves with old brooms and drive the witches from house and home, from farmyard and cattle stall, making a great uproar and clatter as they do so. In Central Europe, the favourite time for expelling the witches is, or was, Walpurgis night, the eve of May Day, when the baleful powers of these mischievous beings were supposed to be at their height. In the Tyrol, for example, as in other places, the expulsion of the powers of evil at this season goes by the name of burning out the witches. It takes place on May Day, but people have been busy with their preparations 4 days before. On a Thursday at midnight bundles are made up of resinous splinters, black and red spotted hemlock, Kappersberg, rosemary, and twigs of the sloe. These are kept and burned on May Day by men who must first have received plenary absolution from the church. On the last 3 days of April all the houses are cleansed and fumigated with juniper berries and rue. On May Day, when the evening bell has rung and the twilight is falling, the ceremony of burning out the witches begins. Men and boys make a racket with whips, bells, pots, and pans. The women carry censers. The dogs are unchained and run barking and yelping about. As soon as the church bell begins to ring, the bundles of twigs fastened on poles are set on fire and the incense is ignited. Then all the house bells and dinner bells are rung, pots and pans are clashed, dogs bark, everyone must make a noise. And amid this hubbub all scream at the pitch of their voices, "Witch, flee, flee from here, or it will go ill with thee." Then they run 7 times round the houses, the yard, and the village. So the witches are smoked out of their lurking places and driven away. The custom of expelling the witches on Walpurgis night is still, or was down to recent years, observed in many parts of Bavaria and among the Germans of Bohemia. Thus in the Böhmerwald mountains, all the young fellows of the village assemble after sunset on some height, especially at a crossroad, and crack whips for a while in unison with all their strength. This drives away the witches, for so far as the sound of the whips is heard, these malefic beings can do no harm. In some places, while the young men are cracking their whips, the herdsmen wind their horns, and the long-drawn notes, heard far off in the silence of the night, are very effectual for banning the witches. Another witching time is the period of 12 days between Christmas and Epiphany. Hence, in some parts of Silesia, the people burn pine resin all night long between Christmas and the New Year, in order that the pungent smoke may drive witches and evil spirits far away from house and homestead. And on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve they fire shots over fields and meadows, into shrubs and trees, and wrap straw round the fruit trees, to prevent the spirits from doing them harm. On New Year's Eve, which is Saint Sylvester's Day, Bohemian lads, armed with guns, form themselves into circles and fire thrice into the air. This is called shooting the witches, and is supposed to frighten the witches away. The last of the mystic 12 days is Epiphany, or 12th night, and it has been selected as a proper reason for the expulsion of the powers of evil in various parts of Europe. Thus at Brunnen, on the lake of Lucerne, boys go about in procession on 12th night, carrying torches and making a great noise with horns, bells, whips, and so forth, to frighten away 2 female